Hello, gorgeous, and welcome to the Midlife Realignment. I'm your host, Esther Blum, and I'm here to disrupt the narrative on perimenopause and menopause with humor, nutrition, hormones, and fierce self-advocacy. Together, we'll rewrite your story and the rules because there's a light at the end of the vaginal tunnel. Let's go. Christine Maren is a board-certified physician and founder of a thriving functional medicine practice focused on root cause care for women with expertise in perimenopause, hypothyroidism, gut health, autoimmune disease, and metabolic support. She integrates conventional diagnostics with advanced functional medicine testing, lifestyle strategies, and precision hormone therapy to treat the whole woman, not just her symptoms. A mother of three, Dr. Maren is a sought-after speaker on women's health, hormones, and functional medicine, and her signature three-pillar method, which is to address root cause, optimize hormones, and build resilience. She empowers women to restore vitality and create lasting change. And I really hope you listen to the end of this podcast because that's when things got super juicy. Enjoy. Well, Christine, welcome to the Midlife Realignment. So glad we're finally together for this call. Let's just jump right in and talk about all the brilliant things that are cooking in your mind. And I really want to start off asking, why does your thyroid really shift in midlife? Like so many of my clients all of a sudden have these autoimmune conditions or sluggish thyroid, and just the wheels come off the bus.
Yeah, I think it's really multifactorial, like so many other things. I always kind of think about all the different logs that are in the fire. And so for some women, there's underlying autoimmune disease like Hashimoto's that's causing hypothyroidism. And that might have been brewing for a while. We know that autoimmune disease really tends to surface after women have pregnancies. And during perimenopause and menopause. So during those endocrine transitions, women have higher rates of autoimmune disease. So perhaps, there's an autoimmune disease like Hashimoto's that's affecting thyroid function, but there's other things that affect thyroid function too. And so sometimes we see things like subclinical hypothyroidism, maybe because a woman is, has certain nutrient deficiencies. I mean, we need all these different nutrients to make and convert thyroid hormones. Stress, honestly, is a really big one. I mean, so many women are misaligned. Like, I love the name of your podcast because it's like, how do we get back into an alignment? What's that look like? And when we're misaligned, it creates a lot of stress. Mm-hmm. And many of us are also pushing through, we're so used to pushing and pressing and working hard and neglecting ourselves. And it creates a lot of stress, and that stress actually impacts thyroid function. So it works through, our thyroid works through the HPA-TG axis. So really what that means is in our brain, we've got the hypothalamus and the pituitary that send signals to our thyroid gland, to our ovaries, to our adrenal glands. And so thyroid function is sometimes impacted by that as well. Of course, dietary kind of stuff plays a role even here too. I see so many women who are on this like low carb diet. And so they don't even necessarily have poor thyroid function. They have poor conversion between T4 and T3. And so, they're suffering with symptoms that seem kind of like hypothyroidism, but really it's what's going on outside the thyroid that's impacting, that thyroid conversion, because ultimately our bodies are designed for survival, and we will shunt resources to like put on the metabolic brakes. And that happens in the thyroid as well with something we call reverse T3, where women are like, put on the brakes.
I'm so thrilled that you say this. I'm constantly trying to refuel my clients who are eating, I jokingly call it the ventilator calorie diet. I'm like, you are eating less calories than my patients were in the hospital lying in bed on a ventilator. Like, it's insane how much these women I see, and you probably do too, are radically under eating. And the low carb diet works great for, a couple months. And then the thyroid gets hip and says, you're not fueling me. I can't do my job because you're not even putting enough carbohydrates for me to run.
That also reminds me, like gut function, your gut microbiome actually plays a really big role in thyroid function and vice versa.
Yeah.
But the other thing that gets hit with the low carb diet, which tends to be low fiber, is the gut microbiome. And so it just turns into this kind of vicious cycle where there's a lot of different things impacting thyroid function or sex hormones or whatever it is. It's a big deal.
Yes.
You know who doesn't, like we don't always talk about too, is what about the women in midlife who are on birth control pills?
Talk about that, please.
I mean, so many women in perimenopause go to their physician or their provider and say, hey, I'm in perimenopause. I need some help with my hormones. And often the first thing they're offered is a birth control pill, which I disagree with for a lot of different reasons, but one of them is thyroid function, actually. So when women go on a birth control pill, it drives up something called sex hormone binding globulin and also TBG, or thyroid binding globulin. And when that happens, we have less bioavailable thyroid hormone because our body's making a bunch of this sex hormone binding globulin as a way to protect us. Here we are back with that theme. Our body's trying to protect us, making a lot of sex hormone binding globulin to protect us from the synthetic ethinyl estradiol that's in the birth control pill. But we've got some side effects, some secondary effects that happen, not just low thyroid function, but that's also why we have women suffer from low libido often when they're on a birth control pill.
So if a woman comes to you on birth control in midlife and has kind of a subclinical hypothyroidism, do you advise her to get on bioidentical, estrogen patches
100%.
or Biest cream?
Yes. So there are a lot of different side effects that come with birth control pills for women in midlife. As women get older, we have increased rates of the serious side effects like stroke and blood clot. And those are real risks. I mean, they're not incredibly common, but they're common enough. Every time I go speak, somewhere in front of an audience, someone comes up to me and says, oh, hey, yeah, I was the person who got the blood clot. So there are serious risks with birth control and less serious but annoying risks with birth control pills. And they offer one thing, contraception. So I think we have to think through okay, what are alternatives for this patient if she needs contraception? What does that look like? Because bioidentical hormone replacement therapy isn't going to offer contraception, but it's working so much differently with our physiology. And I think women have to understand that, HRT and OCPs, which are combined oral contraceptives, work so much differently in our body. A combined oral contraceptive shuts our ovarian function down. So we're not making estradiol and progesterone on our own. We're replacing it with synthetic versions that don't mimic our own hormones. Versus HRT, we're just supplementing, kind of like with thyroid medication. Same thing. With thyroid medication, we're just supplementing our thyroid hormone or supplementing our sex hormones with HRT or thyroid medication to give our system more optimal hormones, not to shut the system down, but to give it more optimal hormones. So if I have a patient who's in midlife and she's on oral birth control pills, especially if she's struggling with low libido or, maybe subclinical hypothyroidism, my first step is how do we get off of a birth control pill and pick something that's a better alternative for her? So if she needs contraception, my first option or my first choice would be a vasectomy. My second choice would be maybe an IUD. There's kind of pros and cons to all of them. But, if I have to pick something, it'd probably be that. Because, of course, I support women's reproductive freedom. But it's tricky. Birth control pills come with a lot of side effects, and we can't ignore that, especially for women as we age.
Well, and I think people forget about the old-fashioned barrier methods. There's the diaphragm and the cervical cap, which, all right, a little less spontaneous, but still a very, very solid option for women that they don't think about, and they're non-hormonal, and, men aren't regularly lining up to get vasectomies necessarily. So it's kind of a happy medium. But, the other problem is with birth control, and you could speak to this far better than me, is it's not, how is it affecting? I mean, our thyroid is so rich in estrogen receptors. So when you replenish your estrogen with bioidentical hormone replacement therapy versus a birth control pill, do birth control pills even hit up those receptors in the thyroid?
Yeah, I mean, no. So as you bring in more estrogen, so if you have a woman who is estrogen deficient or a woman who's on birth control pills and therefore is really estrogen deficient, we shut down her ovaries. So she's not making any estradiol. And our thyroid hormone receptor site sensitivity relies on estrogen. So there's certain things like when we talk about hormones, we talk about hormone production. But then we have to think about, well, what's bioavailable? Because just because we produce it doesn't mean it's bioavailable. So it's another factor. Then we also have to talk about receptor site sensitivity. So if your receptors aren't sensitive, that's a problem too. And so that's where estradiol can help our receptors be more sensitive. So yeah, HRT is more likely to help our thyroid function, whereas birth control pills are more likely to hurt our thyroid function.
And the crazy part in all of this is that women are so open to taking thyroid hormone. They're like, all right, I guess I need thyroid hormone. I'll take that. A lot of women, when we suggest hormone replenishment or replacement, they're like, well, that's when all the fear mongering and resistance arises. And what is that conversation like for you with you and your patients?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just education. And so sometimes depending on where they are,
Yeah.
I have patients who are highly educated, they've read a lot, they've listened to all the podcasts. They know that hormone replacement therapy is actually has more benefits than risks.
Yeah.
But there's also patients out there who are scared that, hormone replacement therapy causes breast cancer because that was the narrative that we've been fed for decades from the Women's Health Initiative study. So it's really just explaining, it's just that informed consent piece. Like, all right, so here's the study. We did this Women's Health Initiative study in the 2000s. It wasn't designed to look at breast cancer. When we went back and did the reanalysis, we saw very different data. And by the way, we didn't really talk about all the benefits that came from that study for women, like reduced rates of colon cancer and reduced rates of type 2 diabetes and reduced rates of osteoporosis. And so with everything, it's just this risk benefit decision, whether I'm thinking about nutrition or like a gluten-free diet or a supplement or hormone replacement therapy. It's just the scale. What are the risks? What are the benefits? That's different for everybody. And how do we start to understand like, oh, there's way more benefits than risks for this patient. What's that look like?
Yeah.
And so it's just a conversation where an education, and for women who aren't comfortable starting it, it's like, okay, here's resources. There's so many resources out there where we can learn. We just have to know the right ones to go to. And usually that's when they come back and they're like, okay, yeah, I read the book. Maybe I'll have them read Avram Bluming's book if they want. I mean, some of those patients, some people really want to understand. And I'm all for empowering women with whatever information they need. Sometimes they're like, okay, I trust you. I'm good. I always say I won't give you anything I wouldn't do myself. I take hormone replacement therapy. And this is why, so usually it's a pretty simple conversation, but sometimes, it does come back to like thyroid replacement and just really explaining like the difference between these things. Many of them were on birth control pills for, decades in their 20s and 30s as well.
Yes.
So I think it's just mostly about the education piece.
Well, and especially because, you've been on synthetic birth control all these years, but you're afraid of HRT, which is about a fifth of that dose, which is fascinating. And the book, by the way, Dr. Christine was referring to is Estrogen Matters by Dr. Avram Bluming. It is my Bible. It's my go-to again and again. I do want to circle back because you dropped that little nugget of gluten-free diets. What percentage would you say of your practice of women with Hashimoto's or with thyroid conditions do you see a benefit from introducing a gluten-free diet versus, does it help? Does it not help? What do you see in practice?
Yeah, I mean, I recommend a gluten-free diet for anybody who has autoimmune disease. And so Hashimoto's is a big reason for that.
Yeah.
And it helps for sure. I always say like a gluten-free diet and low-dose naltrexone are two of the easier ways to get thyroid antibodies, moving in the right direction. I will also recommend it for patients who have digestive issues, at least a trial, like 90 days optimally. Let's just try it and see how it goes.
Yeah.
So I don't think a gluten-free diet is necessary for every person. For instance, like my husband's not gluten-free. And I will say there are some risks to a gluten-free diet as well, because when people go gluten-free, they tend to eat gluten-free substitutes, which actually one we don't talk about very often is corn. So like 100% of corn has aspergillus in it. Aspergillus is a mycotoxin, and it's not good for us. And so there's, we have to kind of talk through like, what does a healthier option for a gluten-free diet look like versus processed gluten-free foods? And we're going to have some of them. I mean, I don't think we have to be perfect, but I always opt for really rice products over corn products if I'm using like a gluten-free pasta or something like that. Maybe, the lentil products if they're organic. But, in terms of a gluten-free diet, I think it can be of great benefit for women who have autoimmune disease. For women who have hypothyroidism, I think it just depends. Is the hypothyroidism because of an autoimmune disease, or is the hypothyroidism caused from something else? Ultimately, it's like, okay, we got to fuel. What does it look like to eat 3 meals a day with at least 30 grams of protein and 10 grams of fiber at each meal? Like, how do we get that in? And just kind of re-exploring, what it looks like to nourish ourselves.
Amen to that. Yes. What do you feel like are the absolute foundational must-have tests that a woman should ask her provider for when she suspects she has thyroid? Because we all know a regular medical practice is going to run a TSH and call it a day. But what is the gold standard for testing around thyroid?
So there's 6 that I measure. I don't have to have every single one. So if we have to negotiate, I'll tell you what that looks like. So TSH is helpful. Like I always order a TSH, but it's not the end all be all. In fact, for women who are under a lot of stress, TSH is probably not going to pick up thyroid dysfunction or suboptimal thyroid function. So TSH measures, it's brain hormone. It's measuring how we're signaling the thyroid gland to make T4 and T3. And so theoretically, if your T4 and T3 are low, TSH should kick in and go high to say like knock on thyroid's door to stimulate the thyroid hormone. So TSH is one. The other ones are free T4 and free T3. Now, in pregnancy, we order total T4 and total T3, but outside of that, free T4 and free T3 because we're looking at what's bioavailable, what's available to our cells. And so many endocrinologists will order a T4 with a TSH, but most primary care doctors, in my experience and in my training, will order a TSH and only look at T4 if it's abnormal. And that's actually what's recommended by the American Board of Family Medicine, which I disagree with a lot. I think we should always be looking at T4. We won't catch certain kinds of hypothyroidism if we don't. And so T3 is way less ordered. A lot of physicians don't really look at T3. Part of the problem there is also reference ranges. So we'll talk about that. But T4 converts to T3. And so T3 is really what's interacting with your cell. So your thyroid makes T4, it's got to convert to T3. So TSH, T4, T3. The one I like to order is reverse T3. That'll tell us a lot if women are underfueled or under a lot of stress. That's like the body going into hibernation mode and like hitting the brakes. Reverse T3 is like the brakes, free T3 is the gas. And so in my practice, I like to look at a reverse T3. If a patient can't get it, it's not like an absolute deal breaker, but it does tell us some good information. And then I would say, deal breaker is thyroid peroxidase antibodies. So those are way under ordered. I mean, I see so many women who have been walking around knowing they have hypothyroidism, but they don't know that it's caused by an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's. And so that's where TPO or thyroid peroxidase comes in. Thyroglobulin is also nice to have. Some women have high thyroglobulin and normal thyroid peroxidase who have Hashimoto's. The most have high TPO or thyroid peroxidase with normal TG or thyroglobulin. Some have both that are elevated. So it's nice to have all 6, TSH, free T4, free T3, reverse T3, TPO, and thyroglobulin. But if I had to pick, and my doctor wouldn't order all of them, I would say the deal breakers would be TSH, free T4, and TPO. Like if I have to pick, I'd really like a T3 in there too.
And can you circle back to what you were saying about the labs too, the lab interpretations, because you can order from LabCorp versus Quest, and you can order from the same lab at different times and have 2 different test results. So how do we get just consistency across the board so we can really understand if it's a true, thyroid deficiency or where we are on the spectrum.
It's not, when we look at T4 and T3, it's not that dissimilar to testosterone in women. So there's like a huge reference range when we look at testosterone, and it varies from lab to lab. And so with testosterone, I tell patients I like it in the upper third of the reference range. With thyroid, I tell patients I like it in the like middle to upper part of the reference range. When we look at T3 in particular, some labs go down really low to like 1.7, which that's really low, 1.8. It's pretty rare to have free T3 flagged as low. Kind of like with testosterone, with free testosterone, it's pretty rare that it's flagged as low because low is like sometimes zero.
Yeah.
Actually, some labs, like the reference range literally goes to zero. And I'm like, what? This makes no sense. So with free T3, it's the same thing. The lab reference range goes quite low. And so look at the reference range, first of all. Typically what I'm aiming for is somewhere in the threes. So for free T3, I'd love to see a 3.2 or 3.5. Somewhere in the threes is good. For T4, somewhere, between like 1.1 and 1.4 is great in most labs. Same thing, look at the reference range. It usually goes down to about 0.7. So if you're at 0.8, it's not flagged as abnormal, but like you're really close to, think of it like a bell curve. You're really close to that bottom range. And so usually that represents a little bit of like sluggish thyroid function. And then with TSH, 1 to 2 is like my sweet spot. The reference range for TSH also really big. And so when we look at TSH, or when we look at the reference range, labs are calculating that reference range based on an average population that's sick, some of them who have hypothyroidism. So I'm not trying to be average, I'm trying to be optimal. And so what does optimal look like? And 1 to 2 for TSH is great. That doesn't mean I'm going to treat a woman who has a TSH of 2.5, but I'm certainly going to follow it and look for more information. And sometimes, depending on her symptoms, I might supplement with a little thyroid hormone, though truly I'm more conservative about that than I used to be.
And for those of you who are driving, listening to this, are like, wait, I didn't catch that. This will all be in the show notes, so you can
I also have a thyroid lab guide I can give you where it'll outline all of my optimal reference ranges and the labs I order and all of that, just to, so somebody can have something on a piece of paper that makes it all make sense.
Perfect.
Because it's complex, and honestly, most physicians don't practice this way. So
correct. And even, a lot of endocrinologists don't even practice this way.
Yeah. Most do not. Yeah.
No. And so what do you do? I have had clients with that true subclinical where their labs are quote unquote normal, not optimal, but normal, but they still feel like dog poop.
Yeah.
What do you do in those cases? How do you tease out?
Yeah, I'm not really fast to start thyroid medication. I used to, actually, and I'm more conservative about it now. I will start thyroid medication in some patients, but my first goal is okay, let's work on the gut microbiome. Let's replace any nutrient deficiencies. We're looking at iron and ferritin and zinc and selenium and vitamin D and homocysteine and figuring out, what nutritional deficiencies are underlying there. And then maybe we also start hormone replacement therapy, though sometimes patients who start hormone replacement therapy feel worse. And I think that's actually related to underlying thyroid dysfunction in some patients, not all. So it just depends on the patient. Let's just say I have a woman and I look at her thyroid function and her TSH is 3.5 and her free T4 is 0.8. And her free T3 is, I'm just making up numbers here, but it's stuff I see clinically all the time. Free T3 is I don't know, 2.6. Those are technically normal labs, but that pattern right there, I'm oh, this is, this looks like thyroid dysfunction. And then I check her thyroid antibodies and they're positive. Okay, this is hypothyroidism. It's subclinical hypothyroidism caused by Hashimoto's. And technically it doesn't even reach the diagnostic criteria for subclinical because her TSH is normal, but let's just say she's got suboptimal thyroid function. That particular patient, if she doesn't feel well and she's got a lot of symptoms of hypothyroidism, I might treat her with thyroid medication, similar to how I use HRT. My goal isn't to make her TSH go down or get suppressed, sort of like that's what birth control pill does to the ovaries. It shuts everything down. So I'm not trying to shut down thyroid function. I'm just trying to supplement with a little bit of thyroid hormone and get her into a sweet spot and see how she feels. If the same patient, though, has, really low ferritin and a really low zinc and her gut's a mess, I might wait to start thyroid until we treat some of that and check it again in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Now, my patients, I see them often and I'm checking labs, often every 6 to 8 weeks in the first year that I see them. So, I'm getting a lot of data points and I know she's got follow-up coming. And so, it really just depends on the person.
Yes. And I want to circle back to what you said about the gut too, because yes, I see in practice all the time women with really poor gut function, bacterial overgrowth, inflammation, a leaky gut. And, once progesterone and estrogen take a nosedive, it changes the entire lining of the mucosal lining of your small intestines. You're not absorbing nutrients well. You're reacting to foods you didn't react to before. Just quelling that inflammation and healing and sealing that gut well absolutely speaks to the thyroid. And same thing, like, you can throw a lot of iodine and selenium and zinc at the thyroid, but you can also just go back to the basics and heal the gut first.
Yeah.
And that clears out a lot of brain fog, helps with insulin resistance and insomnia, and even hot flashes can resolve when you fix the gut. So important to never overlook the basics. And we don't have to, quote unquote, biohack everything and throw the kitchen sink at it. And especially, I'm reminding all of you overachievers listening to this, like, more is not better. Sometimes just giving yourself permission to do less and simplify is the most healing thing you can do.
Yeah, amen to that. That's, I can't tell you honestly how surprised I am to see patients who have actually been working with integrative and functional doctors. But I think, and they're absolutely, like, I believe these doctors are here to help patients, but they're so focused on other things like Lyme and mold and SIRS that they're sometimes ignoring things like SIBO and CFO, fungal overgrowth. And so even in integrative practices, the gut is overlooked. Yeah. Unfortunately, gut health is it is an overly looked piece of the puzzle when you're out there in conventional, medicine as well. A gastroenterologist serves a lot of important services when we're talking about ruling out colon cancer and inflammatory bowel disease and polyps and things like that. But they're usually not as focused on things like IBS. It's just a diagnostic code. It's literally an ICD-10 code, but it doesn't tell us anything about what's wrong. Yeah. And so some of those patients too are treated with prescriptions like Linzess or other kind of scripts that don't fix the underlying problem. Usually there's some underlying gut infection or microbial imbalance. And then that goes straight back to hormones, because as we go through perimenopause and menopause, the hormonal changes have a direct impact on the composition of our gut microbiome, as well as the leaky gut, the tight junctions are influenced by estradiol. Mm-hmm. So imagine too, for women on birth control pills, back to that conversation, we've shut down your ovaries, you're not making estradiol. What is that doing to our bone health? What is that doing to our gut health? What is that doing to our brain? There's so many different side effects from those medications. And I have to wonder, for those of us in midlife, many of us were on birth control pills for a decade or 2 decades plus. And so what did that do to our bone health now that we're in our 40s and 50s? So many women with osteopenia or osteoporosis. I see a lot of osteopenia in the 45 to 55-year-old range. And so what is that from? Is it because we shut down our bones when we were younger on birth control pills? I don't know that we know the answer, but I think that's a piece of the puzzle. But of course, the gut piece is a big deal.
It's a huge deal. And also, the brain biochemistry piece, the serotonin, dopamine, we think of how there's a real mental health crisis. I'm going to go a little off script here, but, my husband and I were just talking about how physically different people look now versus in the 70s. Because we were watching one of those retrospectives with Cher with all her different outfits and her physique. And, people in the 70s look very different than people look now. And now, we're struggling with obesity. I see I was at the gym this weekend lifting and I saw, a very lean father with two obese children. And I was like, where did the wheels come off the bus, right? And so much of it is our food supply and our gut health. Our microbiomes are different. Kids are not in the dirt so much. They're not outside. They're not exposed to um, as many farm to table foods, all of these. And it's never too late to change our microbiome. I just had Cynthia Thurlow on discussing the menopause gut. I mean, it's not complicated to change your microbiome, but we do need to go back to that because we are also struggling with weight gain in midlife, be it from Hashimoto's or low hormones or just exhaustion because all of the following are low, just getting back to nature, getting back to farm to table foods, not necessarily washing your farm picked carrots, just eating them raw and having some microbes on them is good for repopulating your gut. Getting a variety of foods, rotating the vegetables that you eat. We all, and I'm guilty of this too, we all tend to choose the same, 4 or 5 vegetables. But if we can really rotate our fruits and our vegetables, makes a huge difference. And it supports your thyroid too along the way.
Yeah, for sure. I think the big one is really fiber. I mean, so many women undereat fiber, and there's nothing more important to our gut health than fiber. So, what's interesting too is if we look at some of the studies on gut health in the perimenopausal transition, and I'm sure Cynthia, talked through this, but as our hormones change, our gut microbiome changes, and the change. So we lose sexual dimorphism. So a woman's gut microbiome looks more like a male's in menopause. And that also conveys increased risk for weight gain and cardiometabolic risk. Heart disease is the number one killer of women. I mean, it is part of the puzzle when we think about weight gain in perimenopause. Of course, we're thinking about, thyroid function and like metabolism and blood sugar and all that. But part of it, I think the under-recognized piece is really what's going on with the gut microbiome.
So, and you called that the gender biome. Was that your term?
This sexual dimorphism.
Sexual dimorphism. Didn't you use another term, gender?
Microgenderome.
Microgenderome.
Yeah.
What are the?
Yeah.
Okay, these are very technical terms. What is the difference between the two, and how do women now become men on the inside? What's that mechanism happening there?
So this is one of those discussions I have with all my patients, usually at the start of our appointment is like, okay, listen, gut health and hormones talk to each other. So your gut health impacts your hormones. It impacts the way we metabolize and excrete and balance hormones. And that fancy term is the estrobolome.
Yeah.
So it's the part of the gut microbiome that's in charge of metabolizing those hormones. Now, the backside is that hormones actually impact gut health. And that's a big deal as we go through hormonal transitions like perimenopause, because the composition of the gut microbiome is actually impacted by your hormones. And so as we go through hormonal transitions like menopause, the gut microbiome starts to shrink and look like a male gut microbiome, and we lose sexual dimorphism. Sexual dimorphism means that a male and a female gut microbiome are very distinct and different. Females have a lot more diversity, but that plateaus at age 40. So the other piece of the puzzle, the thing that makes the microgenderome, and I'm showing a triangle here, is the immune system. So we've got gut health, hormones, but then the immune system cross-talks with both those systems as well. So we know, and we've always known in functional medicine, there's this big connection between gut health and the immune system. So your gut health, when your integrity is poor, leaky gut, it's hyperpermeability, that impacts the immune system because the immune system sees what's inside the gut. But actually, hormones also impact the immune system. Estradiol is really anti-inflammatory. It affects immune health. And so, that the microgenderome explains for me why we see so much more autoimmune disease happening in midlife. It's because the immune system is impacted by the gut health, which is impacted by hormones, which is impacted by the immune system. I mean, it's this big, it's this circle and everything is connected.
Mind
Yeah.
blown, right?
It's a
Yes.
lot.
It's a
And it
lot.
doesn't have to be so overwhelming for patients. I want them to
Yes.
understand. And often that's why they're seeing me. They're like, I know, I had a patient last week and she's super intelligent. She's in AI. She understands medicine really well. She's taking some things like peptides. She's taken HRT, but she's like, it just doesn't make sense to me. She's like, I'm going to the gastroenterologist for my gut issues. I'm going to some other doctor who was doing her hormones. It wasn't, I don't know. She was seeing, I don't know what the specialty was, but she was seeing somebody who was doing actually pellets for her.
Yeah.
And then she was going to, I think her OBGYN was looking at her breast health. I mean, it's just like all these different, our medical system is siloed. And
Yeah.
so the specialists serve a role. They're really smart. I refer to specialists for complicated kind of like blood disorders or whatever. But the problem is specialists are siloed. There's this silo where they're just looking at gut health. They're just looking at hormones. They're just looking at the immune system, but nobody's putting it all together. And I was trained as a primary care physician, and we don't have enough time to do that in 15 minutes. I mean, it's just literally like impossible. The system makes it so hard for a primary care doctor to be the one to go, oh, I see the whole picture. Like, let's put this all together. And so patients end up with siloed care. And so, they come see me, and I think the bottom line is I want to educate them that it's all connected. And at the same time, you don't have to fix everything all the time. It's really about like emptying the bucket. So I give this bucket analogy where, our bucket gets full over time from toxins and allergens and trauma, childhood trauma that hasn't been resolved, whatever it is, this bucket fills up. And then when we hit, perimenopause and menopause, this bucket starts to overflow. We have 45 years of, underlying health issues or toxin exposure, whatever it might be. And so there's some things that help us bail water, and hormone therapy is one of them. So is lifestyle, the nutrition choices and strength training and low tox living and mindset and sleep. All of those things really help us like bail water. But ultimately it's like, how do we just bail some water so we can get back to homeostasis? Because our bodies are really intelligent, but we need more safety signals, and we need to, provide the right environment for our body to heal.
Yes. So go PSA to go to your farmer's market, everybody, once a week and just pick a couple of different fruits or vegetables that you don't normally eat, that are only going to eat seasonally, because what shows up at the farmer's market is seasonal, and that's it. So how do we, just rotating your foods, getting that fiber, getting that flax and chia, and getting the skins of fruits and vegetables. Those are like the best things that you can do for your thyroid. Some of the most foundational things, aside from, of course, additional supplements, hormones if need be, and thyroid if need be, thyroid medications.
Yeah. And lab testing. I think, we're disempowering so many women by telling them this story that like, you don't need your labs tested. We're not going to test your labs. And I strongly disagree with that approach. I think,
Yes.
why aren't we empowering women? Let's get some actual data. If you have a vitamin B12 deficiency and an iron deficiency, like that's certainly not helping your thyroid function. And so what do we do with that piece? I got to say too, for women in midlife, this common trend I see too is sometimes they're eating really well, but they're taking antibiotics every year because they're getting UTIs or they have recurrent sinus infections or whatever. So especially for women in midlife who maybe don't know about hormone replacement therapy or about vaginal estrogen, it's like, you don't have to live with UTIs. We got to figure out what the upstream issue is and correct that, so we don't keep taking, an antibiotic. Because even, sometimes women are like, I don't take antibiotics very often, maybe just once a year. I'm like, that's actually a lot.
Yeah.
Because it takes your gut microbiome somewhere between 6 months and 2 years to rebuild after a course of antibiotics, depending on which one we use. And so it can be such a big deal. But the nutrition piece is so foundational and fundamental.
It is. So, all right, but let's talk about putting advocacy back into women's hands, and men too, if they're listening. So what are some of the signs to look for if your thyroid is off, like clinical and subclinical? Just as a human being, how do you start to put the pieces together and say, I need to see someone about this?
This is a really important point, because hypothyroidism and perimenopause share so many symptoms. So it's hard to differentiate between those. So this is where it's like, test some labs. Don't always assume it's perimenopause. It might be both. So some classic symptoms with hypothyroidism are things like dry skin, constipation, fatigue, weight gain, can't get enough sleep, irritability, edginess. Sometimes people have changes in their menstrual cycle. Hair loss is a big one. What am I missing here?
Brain fog?
Sometimes kind of say it.
Brain fog?
Oh yeah, brain fog, totally, 100%. Yeah, but like all of those symptoms are also really common in perimenopause,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
It's like it's hard to differentiate. So there are some symptoms. I'm trying to think of like a big differentiator. I mean, maybe hot flashes, hot flashes, and you can get palpitations with thyroid dysfunction too, but it's like hot flashes and palpitations and vasomotor symptoms are usually a sign of perimenopause,
Yeah.
but they're going to be worse if you have thyroid dysfunction. And just
Yes.
because you have one thing doesn't mean you don't have the other thing. And so this is where I think it's lab testing. We need the
Yeah.
data. Why are we keeping this from the hands of women? Give them some data.
Why indeed, my friend? Why indeed?
I think we know why.
Feel free to say it. You could say anything on this podcast.
I mean, it's this idea that we keep women disempowered,
Yeah.
Yeah,
constantly.
The system is more comfortable when women are disempowered, frankly.
That's right. There's 25 boner pills on the market. Where's our estrogen? Where is it? So yes, that's, I feel like Charlotte on Sex and the City when she's waiting for Prince Charming to come. She's like, I've been dating since I was 15. Where is he? Like, I want to be like, where's our estrogen? Hey, gorgeous. If you're eating well, exercising, and doing all the right things and still gaining weight, feeling exhausted and puffy, that's not a willpower problem. That's a macros problem. Here's the thing nobody tells you. The nutrition approach that worked in your 30s is not the one your body needs now. Your hormones have shifted, your metabolism has shifted, and your macros need to shift with them. My Macro Reset program gives you a personally customized nutrition framework built around how your body actually works right now, so you can stop white-knuckling it and start seeing real results. Check it out at estherblum.com/macros. The link is in the show notes. Now, back to the show. All right, so we've talked about diet. We've talked about actual thyroid replenishment. We've talked about hormone replenishment. What are your favorite lifestyle tools to heal an imbalanced thyroid or a tired, poorly functioning thyroid? What are, spiritual or just practical pieces that you like to have in your tool belt?
Okay. So in my practice, I always walk patients through these 5 foundational health habits. And I want to circle back to the spiritual piece, so I'll do that last. But habit number 1 is nutrition. So as you mentioned, fruits and vegetables, diversity in your diet. I always aim for at least 30 grams of protein per meal and 10 grams of fiber per meal. So that's 30 grams of fiber per day. So 30 grams of protein per meal, 30 grams of fiber per day. That's sort of like the simple way. It depends on the patient. I mean, patients who are more active or way more, they need more protein, but just like to keep it basic, like that's a good place to start. So nutrition is number 1. Number 2 is movement and strength training. So there's a lot of patients out there who think that if they have an autoimmune disease, they really shouldn't be working out. And this is another one I strongly disagree with. Working out is so important for our immune function. It's important for our hormone balance. It's important for our metabolic health. It's a big deal. It's also important for our mental health. But, I'm a big advocate for strength training, building muscle, and walking. And for patients who don't feel well, we don't ever neglect sleep to work out. The third one is sleep and rest. And sometimes that ties back into hormones. For women in perimenopause who aren't sleeping well, sometimes, estrogen and progesterone make all the difference in the world, but we've got to nail down sleep. And I'm never one to sacrifice sleep for a workout. So, we got to nail all of these things down. Number 4 is low tox living. And so, we have all these toxins we know about. They're called endocrine disrupting chemicals. What do? They disrupt the endocrine system. They disrupt hormones. And so for women with, any sort of thyroid dysfunction, hormone imbalance, whatever it is, they also disrupt the immune system. They're immune disrupting chemicals, and they disrupt the gut health, actually, like pesticides that actually impact our gut health. So, low tox living and taking out, BPA and the best we can. I'm always 80-20 in this realm. And then number 5 is really this mindset piece, like a mindset of self-compassion and self-awareness. And then how do we unpack that stress piece? I think it's a whole thing. It's this whole other layer of like, what do we learn about ourselves? How do we get realigned with ourselves and what we want? We've been so conditioned to serve others all the time at the expense of ourselves. So, we are taught as women and as girls that it is a good girl helps everyone else and puts her own needs on the back burner. And so what's it look like to work through that good girl? I always say it's like the hardest part is unlearning all of the things that we've been taught. And this really comes back actually to thyroid dysfunction and Hashimoto's. I had Hashimoto's. When I started having really hard conversations, where I felt it, and I was surprised because I would identify as like an assertive person who was raised by a little feminist in some ways, not by my mom, but my oldest sister who's 10 years older than me was like she was a feminist. My mom was Catholic. There's all like, all that soup got into my subconscious. So there's lots of different influences there. But as I started saying some of the hard things, I could literally feel it in my throat. It was like, there is this energetic layer to our being. And I think, in conventional medicine, we don't learn anything about this, but I have a lot of interest in meditation and in energy centers or chakras. And, what does that look like? And so when we think about the thyroid and the neck area, it's like speaking our truth. What does that look like to say what's on our mind? And we're taught not to do that because be a good girl. Like good girls don't piss everybody off. And so, I think it's this added layer of healing. I talked about the microbiome. I think, there's this thing that holds all those systems, and it is our nervous system. And so how do we get our nervous system into a place where we're safe? And really that ties back to everything else, because sometimes our nervous system is sensing we don't have enough food. Hey, if you're not eating, food, shelter, air, water. Like you got to have some basic things to feel safe. Food, air, shelter, water, right? Like for me, shelter was a big deal, actually. I had mold exposure in a home, and that really freaked me out. That made my shelter a scary place, not a safe place. And so I had to do a lot of work around that. And then of course, a lot of work around food. Like what's it look like to have, or to be able to eat food and not to sit down and be like, oh, I can't eat that. I can't eat that. I can't eat that. So how do we nourish ourselves? And also like, there's a balance, like getting away from that food fear and also making good decisions where we're eating for nourishment. I'm still gluten-free, but there was a time when I was on a really restrictive diet, when I was very hypervigilant in my house because of, this water damage exposure. So I think sometimes it's working through, all those spiritual and energetic layers.
Mm-hmm. And I love what you said. I mean, it's really amazing that you felt when you spoke your truth, that you felt it in your throat. And it made me think, I wonder how many women have had thyroid cancers from unspoken truths that is just festering and making us sick versus releasing it and using our voices is the most powerful thing I think we can do.
I think women who feel unsafe, sometimes they don't even know it because we're so used to it. And I never want to diminish women, like high achieving, high performing women, like, wow, we can do a lot. It's amazing what we've accomplished. And there's a time for realignment. But when is that? Midlife is like it's the time. Let's get realigned, figure out what we like, who we are, what we want, serve ourselves, be self-compassionate. But I feel like, there's so many women who are just bracing. It's like bracing for impact. And
Mm,
there's a lot of like neck tightness that comes along with that, which leads to migraines. There's a lot of TMJ and grinding the jaw.
yeah.
There's a lot of pelvic floor dysfunction. Women who tend to like tighten up at the jaw tend to tighten up the pelvic floor as well. So
Yeah.
there's just this feeling overall of like bracing. And so that is
Yeah.
where, I start to really at least bring awareness to that, because I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a therapist,
Yeah.
but I love therapists, psychiatrists, psychologists, energy workers, trauma therapists. I think they serve
Yeah.
a really important role when women are really thinking about like peeling back the layers and getting back to a place of alignment and health. And if you find that you're bracing for impact, I think the question
Mhm.
is why? What happened to you? So Oprah
Mhm.
has a really great book that she wrote with Bruce Perry that I love. It's called What Happened to You? And
Mm.
it's really like, what happened to us as a child to tell our system that we're not safe? And
Mhm.
then we end up in adulthood and we're in survival mode. And so what does that look like? How do we start to unpack that and get to a place where we feel safe again?
Yeah, and
Sometimes that's a woman's life work, I think.
100%. And so she doesn't pass it on to her children and the future generations. It's not imprinting trauma. And we can clear out those old error messages that aren't currently true how we're living today. So
Mhm.
you said
Yeah.
you had Hashimoto's. Is it in
Mhm.
remission now?
Yeah. I think it's really important that we identify a certain way. So I'm very specific about that statement. Um, I have a lot of patients who identify with their diagnoses, and our system hears what we're saying, right?
Yeah.
Like, even if it's a joke, like even if we're talking bad about ourselves and like self-deprecating and we're just being kind of funny and relatable, like our system hears that, doesn't necessarily know the difference. So I really think it's important. We tend to, and I understand why, as women, I think they feel a bit safer to have a diagnosis. And some of that's because they've been dismissed in the medical model so many times. They've gone to the doctor and said, like, something's not right. I don't know what it is. I don't feel good anymore. And finally, they get a diagnosis, right? Like they've gone to 6 doctors. Finally, they get diagnosed with Hashimoto's. But I think that there is also some risk in over identifying with any particular diagnosis and starting to identify instead as like healthy and whole.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's where I'm at.
I've been listening to a lot of Joe Dispenza lately. He's been, he was on the Lewis Howes School of Greatness
Yeah.
podcast, but I do one of his meditations every morning that I just love about gratitude. But his research has proven, and there's many research papers that prove our bodies can actually make greater levels of opioids than any prescription possible. And for those of you who don't know, Joe Dispenza had he fractured 6 vertebrae. He was hit on a bike during a triathlon, I believe, and was told he would never walk again. And in 6 months, he was walking again. He spent hours visualizing his vertebrae healing at the cellular level. And so we humans are beyond capable of healing ourselves when given the right tools to do so. But the first is the unshakable belief or already visualizing ourselves fully healed and whole so that our cells and our DNA and our mitochondria and everything can catch up to it. So it's really
Yeah.
trusting that we've got this at the end of the
It's
day.
funny. I've done 6 of his meditation retreats, maybe 5. I can't remember. So I'm a big product of Joe Dispenza's work.
Mm. So is there anything you
Very
want to
much.
add to what I said? I mean, I have not done any of his retreats. Is there anything you want to
Yeah,
add?
they're great. I'll meet you there.
Y'all meet you there. Okay.
They've been great, but yes, I think that is a really great exercise for women, is just to sit and visualize yourself. Like, what do you look like as happy and whole?
Yeah.
The first time I did one of his retreats, I like wrote down, what I was in the past and what I want to be in the future,
Mhm.
and what does that look like? I
Mhm.
don't want to be resentful and hypervigilant and fearful and restricted and constricted. I want to be happy and joyful and free and loving and and healthy and whole. So what does it look like? What does she look like? What does she feel like? And so a lot of his meditation is really just related to like sit in your body, get into your body. I think this is another big layer with women is we're so disembodied and disconnected from our systems. And so get reconnected, get embodied, and then visualize yourself as the woman walking in health and wholeness and happy and joyful and whatever she looks like. Keep focusing on her every day, day after day. I mean, I have, I can just attest to that work for myself. And it's been really beautiful. And it's not the only thing, people ask me like, well, what did you do? Because a lot has changed for me in the last, 3-5 years. And I was already really into health, so the question is like, well, what did I do? I don't know. I did a lot of things. I really committed to myself and to my self-care and to working out and going to the gym and lifting weights. But it wasn't just that. It was also like all the mental work, all the, trauma therapy and the work I've done with Joe Dispenza's kind of meditations. I do that same 15-minute gratitude. Is it that one that you do in the morning?
It's a 22 one. A 22-minute one.
I'll have to find that one.
But yeah, I'll
15 to 22-minute ones are awesome.
Yeah.
The 45-minute to 60-minute ones are like, I would love to do them every morning, but it's hard. It's hard to fit all that in.
Well, yes. And true story, I do it on my walk. I don't sit.
Oh, wow.
I close my eyes when I walk. I luckily don't crash into trees.
When you walk?
For little bits of time, not for long. Or I would get hit by a car or crash into a tree. But yes, I'm able to visualize and release and get in it.
That's awesome. Yeah, he has walking. Is it a walking meditation?
No, it's not supposed to be. You're supposed to drop into your body. But you know, when you meditate for a long time, you can drop in at any time.
Yeah.
So he
has walking meditations that, I don't know. My favorites are always like the sit down, close your eyes. Like,
yes.
But some people just like love the walking meditations and have these really like mystical experiences when they do it. So
yes,
that might be you.
That's me. Yes. I definitely have mystical experiences, but regardless, you started saying yes to yourself more and no to what didn't serve you. And I think women feel so unsafe to drop into their bodies. They've been so dissociated for so long and don't even know they're dissociated. And, if we can teach ourselves that our bodies are the safest place on the planet, that's the healing. That's a huge, huge piece of the healing. It's in the head, it's in the heart, and then the rest follows. There's also another great resource, and then we'll wrap up. Nicole Sachs' book. What's it
Mind
called?
Your Body.
Mind Your Body.
So good.
That's another great one. And a dietitian colleague had referred that to me, and I studied it good and hard. And she was like, yes, I used to have all of these food allergies and fear around food and, terrified to eat corn or this or that. And she's like, now I have wine, I have gluten, I have everything, and I'm totally fine. But it's really expressing our feelings on paper. It's journaling and doing some meditating and very simple daily practices that you commit to.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for spending time here today. Where can women find your program, learn more about your program and that thyroid resource guide that you mentioned?
Yeah, I will pass along the thyroid resource guide so people have it in the show notes. And
can you announce it here, or is it a long ass link?
I think it's kind of long.
Okay.
We'll put Dr. Christine Maren / I can't remember. That's not actually the
that's not actually the thing.
So
okay. So we'll put it in the show notes. If they go to your website or get on your list, can they find it there too?
Yeah, they can find it there for sure.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram and my website, but I will be sure to send you that thyroid lab guide because it's a really good resource and lots of women love it. It's all the juicy stuff that I tell my patients. So it's good information.
All right. Thanks, sister. Rock on.
If you loved this episode, follow or subscribe to the Midlife Realignment wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube, and leave a review to help other women find this show.